stories that are both a delight to read and to hear. The Garden Party. There is a party in a garden on Maple Tree Hill. It's a party I'm sure that is going on still. Every day it gets louder and bigger than many. I think that it could be the biggest of any. Tina and Tom like to pass there each day. Sometimes they would even walk out of their way. On their way home from school, the party was loud and sounded to be a happy, fun crowd. Even some days when the weather was bad, the party crowd seemed especially glad. If the day was all cloudy and rain soaked their feet, the sounds of the party still splashed up the street. But the house was all quiet with no one at home. The lawn was forgotten and was quite overgrown. The gates were chained tight for some years, and the bushes all thick in the front and the rear. No neighbors were near to disturb or drop by, and the stone wall all around would stop those who might try. There are stories of things you may never be told, like what happens to gardens when they're left to grow old. Tina and Tom were a curious two. They had to know more than they knew. There were vines growing over the wall late in May, so they planned to climb into the garden that day. Tom painted Tina, then Tina painted Tom. They hoped that the watercolor green would stay on. Tom wore a watermelon shell on his head, and some leaves made him look like a bush that's well fed. He now was a vegetable, all covered in green, with a plan to sneak into that garden unseen. Wearing those glasses she needed to see, Tina looked like a nearsighted tree. Tom needed some help getting over the wall. Even with vines, the wall seemed much too tall. From where Tina stood, she thought that he could. With one good push, he was over the wall and looked just like a bush. In that garden, well hidden from those who can't climb, they would both sneak a peek and be home for lunchtime. Once over the top, Tom noticed some vines that moved on their own. Tina and Tom were not all alone. It sounded as if the party was near. The talking and laughter were easy to hear. Listening to every word of the group, Tom started to feel like a terrible snoop. He knew that they shouldn't trespass, no matter how thick the bushes and grass. They followed the voices near to the middle, when together they heard a lumberjack riddle. What did the tree say to the lumberjack? Don't ax me! Tom started laughing. He just couldn't stop. His watermelon shell dropped off with a plop. Some watermelon seeds stuck on Tom's nose started Tina to laugh and drop leaves off her clothes. The party grew quiet to view this unrest. Both Tina and Tom were uninvited guests. The vines that were following wound up around their wrists. Both Tina and Tom were tied up in twists. In front of them stood a 6-foot-tall weed, a dandelion in a sports jacket of tweed. A garden is different from all other places, where nature can even give sunflowers faces. After a time, some plants it replaces with lots of strange ones, which can talk in some cases. Tom didn't like what they had to say. The weeds were all whispering about making them stay. No one must know of our garden in here. They both must stay for at least a whole year. Tina knew how to escape from the vines. She quickly told Tom, and he wasted no time. Tom told them some jokes that were moldy and old. The vines soon became loose and began to unfold. Why did the tree cross the road? The shade was better on the other side. What would you call a smart garden that jokes? It's a wiseacre. One after another, 10 jokes Tom retold. The vines wiggled and wriggled, then let go their hold. Tina and Tom ran straight for the wall, and a small hole in the wall through which they both crawled. Tom just squeezed through to the street, except for the shoes and socks from his feet. Behind them, they heard the grass was still giggling, and the trees all around were dancing and jiggling. They haven't told anyone what happened that day. Both Tina and Tom think it's best that way. Now, whenever they pass by the wall, Tom will yell. He tells them a joke, and the weeds think it swell. If ever you find you are with unfriendly folks, it may really be best to tell a few jokes.